Welcome to the Grow Your Practice podcast. Hi, I'm your host, Chad Madden, owner of Madden Physical Therapy and Breakthrough. Join me each week as we dive into the best practices, systems, principles, tips, and tricks to help you grow your private practice.
Hey, everybody, welcome to Grow Your Practice Live. And in our first go at it here, we're going to be talking about today payer mix and how to improve your payer mix with marketing. Let's just start with an icebreaker. Start off with what's your payer mix look like today and who your best payer is. So you can type that in the chat or you can unmute yourself and feel free to share. So number one, who's your best payer, JoAnn?
Who's my best payer?
Yeah.
Anthem.
Anthem. And what percentage of your practice are they?
A third.
So 33%? Oh, that's great.
Roughly. Yeah.
And has it stayed that way for the last few years, like last 5 years, pretty much a third?
Yeah, pretty much. I think we've increased a little bit as we've dropped Aetna, we dropped Cigna, we never got network with a few other payers that we knew up front weren't going to pay anything. Right now, and we're almost like a third. So like a third private pay, a third Anthem, and almost a third Medicare, which is our nemesis.
Yeah, I think I remember you from a call where we were talking about going out of, it might have been with Bob Kowalik or Mary DeLong, going out of network with, or being non-par with Medicare, I believe, is what it was.
We're working on slowly trying to eliminate we've gotten one therapist now who does not accept it. And so I need to start working on the next one, and we'll slowly start cutting back our exposure.
Got it. Great. Thank you. And Brandy, same question for you.
I mean, our best payer is work comp, but it's only maybe 15%. That fluctuates. So, I mean, it can go from up to 20%, but sits about 15%. And then our best payer is also traditional Anthem, but in Indiana, we have a bunch of like other anthems. So we have a state-based Anthem that's actually terrible payer as well. So
you have good and bad anthems.
Correct.
Okay, cool. And is it fair to say that the goal is to improve the percentage of patients coming through with your better payers?
Yes, our better commercial insurance for sure. Yes.
Okay, great. So we'll talk about that here. And just to start, let's talk about what payer mix is for if you're tuning in and listening to this later in terms of a recording. Payer mix is basically the percentage of each insurance that is represented within your patient base. So I think nationally Medicare, since you brought that up, JoAnn, is roughly 30% in private practice PT. I know in my own practice, we're up around 50% private practice. Same thing, workers' comp, might be 5 or like Brandy said, 15. I think it's 5% nationally. So that's payer mix. Marketing, we're talking about marketing to improve payer mix. Marketing is the position of your private practice and your services in a way that you're attracting more of the higher payer. So attract more of the higher payer, less of the lower payer, or you can do like JoAnn did and be very brave and go out of network. Awesome. So why is this important? Well, and this just happened within the last week. 2 practice owners, one who's been in practice for 4+ decades. Last day of their practice was last week. They end up closing a couple. And this was a really good practice too. So it wasn't somebody who was like really struggling and then all of a sudden had to close their doors. And for them, it was their prices increased 30% in the last 4 years to keep their doors open. So, what the trends that we're seeing right now, shrinking margins, declining reimbursements. We want to gainfully employ our therapist. I don't know if you've had any clinicians ask for a raise in the last 12 months.
Yeah.
We've had more than we've ever had, I think, in the previous 20 years. So we want gainful employment. And the other one is the cost of education. We now have therapists coming through that have 300K plus in student loans, and that absolutely puts a ton of pressure on them to need more salary, right? So nice little perfect storm here. JoAnn, you said you're 1/3 cash-based private pay.
Yep.
Okay, that's great. So everything that we're going to talk about here is if you're 100% insurance-based, or you're 100% cash, or you're some sort of hybrid, exactly like you're saying, JoAnn, this applies to everybody. What's up, Troy? You're looking cool. Right? Yeah, I hope you're not driving. Right, he's not. Okay, cool. And then, so how do we do it? Well, before I get into the how, one of the pitfalls that happens is anytime we're trying to influence payer mix with marketing, the first thing that most owners say, and this just happened on my last call, is there's nothing really that we can really do. And I think that's a residual effect from when we relied as an industry solely on physician referrals. I could never go to Troy and say, Dr. Marsh, but Highmark Blue Shield pays us very well. Capital Blue Cross pays us very well. Aetna is horrible for us. So only refer me your Blue Shield or your Blue Cross patients. Don't refer me your Aetna patients, right? You can never do that. Yeah, for very obvious reasons. But when we're talking about how new patients make it into your practice, there are 4 other ways that are super important. At the lowest level, we have reactivations, right? So I'll talk about here just one very simple thing that everybody can do for reactivations to improve their payer mix. At the next level up, we have word of mouth referrals. Again, little difficult to say, hey, Brandy, I know you're doing great in physical therapy. By the way, who do you know who needs our help? But only if they have
insurance.
Anthem, and not the bad Anthem, the good Anthem, right? Like you can't do that. So word of mouth referrals, little dicey. Physicians, definitely not. Organizations, very simple thing that you can do is, if Anthem were my best paying insurer, I would know who the top 10 or 20 employers in my area are that offer Anthem to their employees, right? And I'd want to create relationships there where they're promoting me and my organization, right? The other thing that can happen there is people with Anthem insurance, where are they investing their time? Where are they spending their money, right? Is there a specialty running store, that there's groups of Anthem employees that happen to belong to, or something like that? I would want to know that. But the employer one is the easiest to think about. And we've done that in my own practice with Pepsi, and there's a large credit union in our area where we'll participate in their health fair, their lunch and learns, anything else that they have going on. And literally what that organization will do is promote us to their employees. So that would be something that you could do. And then the final one is called traffic. And I'll talk about that here as well. So one, with reactivations, this is a quick and easy one that you could do. So when you have your patient list, you can go through anybody that you haven't seen in, let's say, 6 months, but not greater than 2 years. So you've seen them within the last 2 years for treatment, but it was at least 6 months ago. You could go through your best payers, right? You could segment your list by best payers, and you could say, okay, the good Anthem, anybody that has the good Anthem, I'm going to message, and I'm going to say something like this in I prefer text, but you could do it in email or whatever. And this is a one-to-one. This is not, you're not scaling this, but it's, hi, Brandy, this is Chad from Madden Physical Therapy. It's been about 6 months since I last saw you for your shoulder. How are you doing? That message has been tested, and it's more than an 80% response rate. I did this it was 2 weeks ago, but I did it with 5 past patients, 3 reactivations out of that. Very easy to do. And they happen quick. So if you just ask some sort of, how are you doing? You have services, those people already know, like, and trust you. And yeah, that would be a very simple way that you can improve reactivations and improve your payer mix just by doing that. So JoAnn, in your case, I'd be thinking about, going through Anthem and creating a campaign specifically for those patients of asking them in some way. If you do that 10 times a day, you're going to have more Anthem patients reactivated than you know what to do with.
Yeah, great idea.
Cold traffic, and then I'll open this up for questions. So cold traffic marketing. This is a tricky one. And it's very dependent on geography. So we promote on Meta, so Facebook and Instagram. And we've also done TikTok and YouTube ads as well, but Meta's the primary one. So if we promote something like an arthritis workshop, we're going to attract patients, right? They're going to skew older.
Mm-hmm.
When we do balance and dizziness, same idea. When we do the latest one that we just tested, it's our lowest CPL ever. So this is like the winner of all time, and we've only done one. So it was pelvic health. Now I'll give you a little bit of how we went through this. And working with owners nationally, there are 3 big buckets of pelvic health patients. Number 1 is pregnancy, so expecting mothers or new moms. The second one is men dealing with prostate issues. Again, that tends to skew older, but in most markets, they're very reluctant to reach out for help. And the third one is people undergoing gender reassignment. Now, what's some of the most of us are clinicians, and we're not necessarily thinking with our marketing hat on all the time, for lack of a better term. But and this in particular happened at our office, is we had pelvic floor specialists who wanted to advertise to all 3, be all inclusive. You can't do that in marketing. So we took the highest prevalence, which was the expecting mothers, at least for our area in central Pennsylvania. Could be different if we're in a different marketplace, but here in central PA, we did expecting mothers. Fantastic turnout, lowest CPL, highest return for our marketing dollar that we've ever done. And we ended up attracting a room full of expecting and brand new mothers that were having pelvic floor issues. And many of them had great private pay. So for us, Medicare is not the best, in particular because of the PTA reduction and everything else that were, the restrictions around billing and everything else in order to maintain compliance there. So for us, it was a huge win. We attracted the right person coming through, and it worked really well. And now it's part of our rotation. Every quarter, we're running a pelvic floor for expecting moms type workshop. All right. So in all of this, let me catch up on the comments here. So Michael said 50% of my practice Medicare and my best overall, 10% Cigna is my next best, rest of a variety of PPOs. Michael, 25% Anthem and it's worse, trying to work with them as we speak for 2 months with little success.
I'm always amazed at the differences between markets and how much different insurances pay. Like Cigna was one of our worst, like it's crazy.
Yeah. So, and that you're in the Northeast. Where you at?
New Hampshire.
New Hampshire. All right. And Brandy's in Indiana. Troy, where are you at? Montana? Utah? Yeah, great. Utah. I can read lips. Got it. Yeah. JoAnn, I have no reason or no idea why that exists, but I see it all the time. I know like Tony and Melissa Sear were sharing, the Blues are their lowest payers in Florida. I don't know how that can happen from state to state, but yeah, it's a real problem that I don't think we can control.
Well, like Anthem, we get roughly 125 an hour versus Cigna, we were getting 83 an hour. I mean, that's a huge difference. But
and it might be different in Pennsylvania and
yeah, right? Like that just I don't
yeah. Definitely some frustrations around that. The key is that, the pitfall is apathy. There's nothing we can do. With the payer mix and with even how it varies, not only from state to state, but where we're at in central Pennsylvania, the typical payer mix is way different in Pittsburgh, which is in the same exact state, but different rates for like UPMC, right? Like we're allowed to participate with much of UPMC, but we get different reimbursement rates than Pittsburgh does, and we're in the same state. So I don't understand that. I just try to focus on controlling what we can control,
Right.
which is, okay, with this payer mix and knowing what we're doing, where can we hedge our bet in a legal, ethical, compliant way that we're having our schedule full of people that are giving us enough money where we can keep our doors open and keep providing service.
Before we continue with this episode, here's a word about our next event, the Revenue Per Visit Virtual Summit.
Private practice owners, are you tired of declining reimbursements and shrinking margins? Join me on July 18th for the Revenue Per Visit Virtual Summit. It's a value-packed, free, online live event where you'll discover strategies that you can put into action in your practice to boost your revenue per patient and enhance your practice's profitability. You'll hear from industry leaders and private practice owners like Mark Callanan from Innovis, who will be talking about how to increase revenue with cash-based services. And Sterling Carter of Sterling PT and Wellness, who was able to increase his reimbursement rates by over 15% with providers. With more than 8 speakers, 5 hours of actionable training, and hundreds of practices in attendance, you don't want to miss out on this game-changing event. Click the link below to register today, and I'll see you there.
Thank you for listening this far. Now, back to the episode.
Cool. So we talked about reactivations, organizations, cold traffic. Anybody have success implementing any one of those in terms of their payer mix? Influencing their payer mix with reactivations, having organizations promote them, or cold traffic advertising?
We don't do any marketing, so I can't comment on any of those.
We've definitely gone to employers and done like their health fairs and things like that. So we've done that. We've done reactivations, but I really sort of like forgot that I can like run my report on my best insurances and like just focus on those. So that's something I just need to push back on my marketing person to really focus on. And ours has changed drastically from last year. Like when we ran our report from 2023, it was way different than 2022. So like our numbers totally changed, which was kind of crazy. Like it was pretty eye-opening to us. So
how did they change?
Like, I mean, we saw decreases in certain insurances. And then obviously we saw the Medicare. We finally got to see the Medicare PTA reduction. So that sucked. But
and you're a PTA, is correct, Brandy?
You what?
Are you not a PTA?
No, I'm a PT.
Okay, oh, sorry.
Yeah. But we use PTAs a lot. So, and they have their own schedules. So it was just like actually seeing it, and what I think it was like, I don't know, a $65,000 reduction last year that we saw. Yeah. Like,
Pretty brutal.
Yeah, it was gross. So
Yep, got it. So when you're thinking about your practice, which one of the strategies you briefly talked about reactivations, that is that the one you focus on?
Yeah, I think that's the one that's super easy. I can run that report in 10 minutes and put my marketing person on doing that and making those calls, like sending those texts, just doing a few every day. And that's pretty easy. And if we just get a few, that's cheap, nothing. And then it's easy. I mean, so that's just easy. So yeah, I liked that idea.
Awesome. Thanks, Brandy. And so I have no idea where I got the idea that you were a PTA from. Were you a PTA before?
Never a PTA.
Can I blame that on Debbie? Right?
Yes, fine. Fair. Fair. I'm fine with that.
Awesome. And JoAnn, how about for you? Which, like, I know you're doing no marketing. Would you?
No, but I love the idea of the reactivation and like really focusing on the insurances that we want in here and less on the ones we don't. You know, one of our, I mean, we are my next step, because our therapists are all very full right now. We're scheduling like mid-July for initial evals. They don't have anything open, but you know, I need to figure out which therapist is the next to like stop accepting Medicare patients. And so, yeah, I think we're just going to slowly start decreasing, because according to Medicare, that is an option. You can choose how many Medicare patients you can have. So between that and I love this email targeting. I think I'm gonna jump on those reports and send something out.
Right. Yep. Any form of how are you works really well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Cool.
Easy. Like sometimes the simplest things are the best, you know?
Yep. Yeah, that's a winner. The other thing that I want to show everybody here was yeah, 1 second. So for those of you listening, you're not going to be able to see this, but if you can see your screen or you're watching on YouTube, let me just make sure. Yeah, great. So this process, number one pain point right now in private practice is reimbursement per visit. So rev per visit is down across the board. Again, I talked with 2 practices in the last week, combined in private practice for 70 plus years. And the one last day was on Friday. Great practice owner, just very unfortunate situation where we have this strong upward pressure on costs and dramatic downward pressure on reimbursements. If we're thinking about a system to improve rev per visit over time or profitability, however we want to look at it, there's a few common things that we should be thinking about. Number one is the profit leak audit. This is a very simple process. We can talk about this on another call in the future. Lance Gross did this at GTS. I had shared it during a course that I teach, and Lance Gross did this. It was worth $1.3 million to his practice in 2024. And he said this took him about 90 minutes in order to go through the exercise. He shared that on stage in Orlando at one of our events. And then this last event here in Harrisburg, Dave Bender, who's a practice owner in Maryland, said it was worth $140K to his practice just by doing the same thing. So they have different size practices, but like looking at what is going on with the revenue. I find very few owners on a private call that are in a very distressed situation have ever done this. So just like looking at what is going on with the revenue is key. The next one is we have to be able to plan forward. Like, do we have the capacity to treat? Can we handle more patients coming through? Or like JoAnn, like you were mentioning, maybe we have a waiting list, but is there a way we can hedge that waiting list to be more viable long-term for our practice, right? Where we have a better margin of safety. When we do that, we get to strategize. There are 4 big areas that we see strategies working with in the industry right now. The first one is marketing for profits. I shared some ideas on that here. The second one is increasing lifetime patient value. That could be adding a cash-based service, something along those lines. The third is improving payer mix. We can do that by dropping a low payer or going out of network, attracting more of our better payers, or renegotiating rates. And number 4 is strategic coding, which is really not giving away care. Right now, when I had Kelly Brown from Prediction Health on, I believe that she shared in all of the audits and everything that came up is number one problem that we have is underbilling, right? So we're leaving money on the table, we're providing services, doing the documentation and not billing for the service. So that's the strategic coding. And I think what is happening is because of the marketplace conditions, we just have to run tighter than we've ever run before. For those of you that don't see this in the diagram, really what is happening is we have something where we're looking, that's the profit leak audit, then we're planning ahead. And what that planning ahead helps us do is to hedge our bet which strategy is going to move our practice forward in the next 90 days. And this system is something that we don't do one time and then stick in a drawer. It's something that we're revisiting every 90 days for the rest of our private practice journey, ultimately to be viable enough to have enough of a margin of safety that we continue to grow and expand and help more people. So this diagram is from a course that I'm teaching right now called Profitability Under Pressure, where we go through this over the course of 13 weeks, 14 weeks, and we go through each of the how-tos. Most of us are time starved. We don't have the time to, go test a whole bunch of different ideas. So what we've done is we've talked with hundreds of practice owners, found out what's working the best for practices to improve their revenue per visit and their profit margins, and then put those into one very specific program. But if you're interested in that and you haven't already done the course, you can go to getbreakthrough.com/apply. Otherwise, we have time for a couple more questions here. But the big picture is audit, profit planner, and then the for-profit levers moving forward. What, JoAnn, you're on top of your numbers, so I have one more question for you. Best diagnosis for you to attract? What's the...
Like who we see the most?
So like in our EMR, we go through and we run a report. So we put the shoulder diagnoses in a bucket, the cervicothoracic in a bucket, the lumbosacral in a bucket, hip pain, knee pain, vestibular, pelvic health across the board. Which one is the best for your practice to attract?
That I have no idea. I don't even know how to get that out of our system, honestly.
All right.
What do you guys use for an EMR?
We're in Raintree.
You're in Raintree. Okay.
Yeah. And there are reasons for that. Multi-location back-end data. When we looked at it, it was the best back-end data, not number one in user interface or anything like that. But for us, it gave us everything that we were looking for on the back end. So we can on that.
Interesting to have a whole conversation on that.
You could audit, right? There are 2 or 3 EMRs that can give you that data, but you could audit. So you could pick a few random patients with a specific diagnosis and just see what was that worth to your practice coming through. Just so that's one more way. Brandy, do you know that answer for your practice?
I mean, our post-op shoulder gives us the most, but then after that, it's neuropathy actually.
Right. So, I mean, then that's your game, right?
Yeah.
Try neuropathy patients.
Yeah.
Do you have a cash-based service that you're at?
And that's why our neuropathy is so high, is because of our laser add-ons with that, I'm pretty sure. And neuropathy just takes, I feel like it's a long kind of treatment thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you're thinking of reactivations or cold traffic marketing, I mean, that's a way better bet for you than something that's lower.
Absolutely.
Are there ways to market for like workers' comp type claims? I mean, when we do get them, they generally pay very well as well, but I don't really know how to target them.
So I don't either, but I know who does. There is a practice manager in our area, and her name's Debbie, and she shared a ton of information. And she said, basically, in Pennsylvania, workers' comp, it's all panel driven. So you have to be on the panel. She, I believe, is a nurse practitioner and has had a long career within that. So she knows all of the case managers and how to get on panels and everything else. And her entire practice that she manages is built on that. And they do primarily workers' comp. I think it's 80% workers' comp. So it's very high, but you need somebody, you need a Debbie who has the network within the panels to make that happen. Yep.
Yeah. Ours is not we don't have panels. Ours is all employer driven in Indiana. But so when we that's who we focus on, is the employers.
Right.
So, and our work comp actually 15 years ago used to be probably around 50%, but now we do early intervention we do cash-based early intervention stuff with the companies.
So that's like preventative medicine.
Yes. So we do a bunch of stuff with them that way. So obviously our work comp referrals are down, which shows that we're doing a good job in the front end part of it, but we don't get as many work comp stuff from it. But it's a cash revenue that comes in monthly, which is super nice. Yeah.
Yeah. Injury prevention in Ahmed is growing rapidly. I mean, that is, we'll find an expert, bring them on here.
Yeah, we're trying to do this, talk about payer mix. We're trying to do more we've gotten 2 so far. We're trying to do more direct to employer and bypass the insurance companies completely and just get cash-based stuff. So we have 2 employers right now that we're working with, and we're offering cash-based services for their stuff. And it's the best ever.
Nice.
If we could
We're gonna
get
have
all of
you on.
those, I'd get rid of everything else.
That's great. We're gonna have you on.
Well,
Yeah.
it's Ben. Ben's the one in charge of that. I
Okay,
just,
great. We'll have Ben.
we just treat the patients, but yes, you should, because they know all about it and it's awesome.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Well, I hope this was valuable for everybody here and moving your practice forward, attracting more of your higher payers and less of your lower, your marketing. So thank you so much for being on here, and I'll see you next time.
Private practice owners, are you tired of declining reimbursements and shrinking margins? Join me on July 18th for the Revenue Per Visit Virtual Summit. It's a value-packed, free, online live event where you'll discover strategies that you can put into action in your practice to boost your revenue per patient and enhance your practice's profitability. You'll hear from industry leaders and private practice owners like Mark Callanan from Innovis, who will be talking about how to increase revenue with cash-based services, and Sterling Carter of Sterling PT and Wellness, who was able to increase his reimbursement rates by over 15% with providers. With more than 8 speakers, 5 hours of actionable training, and hundreds of practices in attendance, you don't want to miss out on this game-changing event. Click the link below to register today, and I'll see you there.